I'll just put it back up there. So it would be, firstly, thank you very much for everyone who has joined. I think we've got a few in the room in the office at Summer Lane in room 116. It would be helpful if we could just run through who's there, if we can. Karen, shall we start with you, because you're on the sort of, as I look at it, on the sort of far right.
I'm not quite sure how to take that.
So sorry about that. It's casting aspersions, or nasturtiums, as my dad would call them.
Councillor Karen McCarthy from Birmingham.
Yeah, excellent, thanks. Should we come back?
Mubashir does.
Hi, Mubashir.
WMCA.
Julie Nugent, Exec Director for Economy and Skills at the WMCA.
Thank you.
You can't really see me, I'm sitting next to Julie. It's Tanya Patel, Governance Services Officer, supporting this meeting.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Tanya.
Simon Hall, part of Julie and Mubashir's team.
Thanks.
I'm Louise. I work at the Combined Authority as the Equalities and Wellbeing Officer, but I'm here actually in my capacity as an independent member of the Mental Health Commission. So it's really great to be here and see everyone.
Ah, that's great. We'll hear from you later, won't we? Lovely. Moving on from you, Louise.
Pete Wilson from West Midlands Fire Service.
Lovely.
Tatum Athari, Strategic Lead for Health and Equalities at the Combined Authority.
Jeff Francis, Economy, Skills and Communities in the West Midlands Combined Authority.
Ah, lovely. Thanks, Jez. Are we there?
Yeah, Danielle is he?
Oh,
Hi.
hello, Danielle.
Hi.
I am sorry I'm not there with you.
No, that would have been lovely, but I'm here in my capacity as Chair of the Mental Health Commission.
Excellent. Thank you very much for all you've done. And you know, we're looking forward to that report a bit later on. Very important work. So and hopefully soon, Danielle, we'll have a catch up, which would be really good and really valued.
Yes, look forward to that.
Okay, so is there so can I, Tanya, ask if we have apologies for absence? There are some.
Sorry, that was me. Apologies, Chair. Yes, you do have one apology. I've received apology from Councillor Gary Flint from Walsall Metropolitan Borough Council.
Okay. I think there are a few more who should be here who may not be here, but so with that they may join us in a bit of time. Okay, and are there any substitutes that we've been notified of?
No, Chair.
Okay. And I wonder if anyone has any declarations of interest on items on the agenda. I don't think they do. So great. Okay, well, you know, as ever. Oh, Justin, have you?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Seacombe, just to say I'm a member of the Mental Health Commission. So and as is Lola, I think, as well. So
yes,
just to log that we are.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and Mark.
Firstly, apologies for late arrival into the meeting. I seem to end up in another meeting room completely. Just to declare an interest, I guess, when we talk about some of the legacy Commonwealth Games funding, I am a non-exec of the Edgbaston Foundation, so
okay.
It's worth just registering that.
Thank you. We'll note that. We'll note that. And is there anything in chat? Lynn Bowers and me too. I think
that was in relation to the Mental Health Commission, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Lola, you've posted that Dr. Sue Ibbotson has now retired from her RD role in the OHID. Well, she has been, well, Sue's fantastic, and we've valued her input in our board for all the time she's been with us. She's an absolute power of information and strength, and you know, I've got nothing but praise for her, actually, so it should be noted. So we've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of December. And I wonder if we can just run through those page by page. If anyone's got anything they want to bring up, page 1, page 2, which we will be talking about the Trailblazer again. Page 3, we started on the skills, employment and health. And on page 4, there was delivering a long-lasting Commonwealth Games physical activity wellbeing legacy. So we will talk a little bit about that. And page 5 was the wellbeing programme update. And that moves us on to the last page, page 6. Can I ask for support and agreement that those are a true and accurate record of our meeting last time? Silence will do. If you don't, then chip in. So I think we can take that as read, Tanya, please. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning and just firstly welcome everyone. We've got, as ever, quite a packed agenda. We're never short of things to talk about. We've got some pretty meaty stuff to talk about today. So I'm going to actually go straight into the agenda items rather than do a sort of briefing beforehand, largely because we've got, these big items which I know are going to tax our thinking this morning. So I'm going to start first of all, if I may, with the Trailblazer devolution deal, and we've got an update. I think, Mubashir, you're able to give us an update on that. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. Just before we do, though, Tanya's got a governance point to make before we get into the meeting.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Chair, I forgot to mention before you got to the minutes, this meeting is in quorum, so any decisions made will be ratified at the CA board in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I just needed to state that.
Yes, thank you. I did mean to mention that, and I hope very much to be able to attend that meeting myself to present these minutes for ratification. So, okay, good. Thank you. So, Mubashir, back to you.
I'm actually going to cede the space to Julie to introduce, and then I'll come and give substantive.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, just thought it'd be helpful to give a very quick update on where we are overall with discussions around TDD. I think it's been a fairly frantic last few days as things have stepped up, and the Mayor and portfolio leads looked at what was on the table on Friday. I think at this point it's fair to say that people don't feel it's yet in a strong enough position for people to be able to accept this is across the board. There are a number of areas where I think other departments haven't really given up much. So the kind of overall status of the deal is still being worked through. The texts had gone to number 10 at the back end of last week, and we haven't seen anything coming out of that. So our expectations are things will move quite quickly this week, hopefully in a positive direction. There are some positives on there around business rates, retention, around funding for land affordable housing, but some of the other departmental discussions haven't moved perhaps as much as we'd want. The other area that might be of interest, in particular, leadership will talk through the health proposal, but that might be of interest to this board in particular, DWP have offered us the opportunity to co-design future employment support, which was one of the things we really wanted, building on the success of things like our IPS model. So I think there's huge opportunity in us as a region to be able to take that forward in a much more kind of bespoke, localised way. But overall, things are in a state of flux. So apologies if what you see today may have shifted by the end of the week, but that's the overall, I guess, status of this negotiation. So thank you. I'll pass back to Mubashir now.
So with that caveat, I'm going to take us through what we have so far in terms of where we started, which is this slide in terms of what we wanted to achieve, and where we are currently with the text. And it's to be fair, it's not too far off from where we started. So the only issue, as Julie highlighted, was some of the departments have not moved far enough in terms of funding the asks. And this is one of them, obviously. But there is a little bit of movement in terms of wanting to start to talk about funding, which you'll see in the text here. So that's a positive sign. So in terms of the deal text at the moment, we just kind of going line by line, essentially this is the beginning bit where we talked about why we want to get involved and why we think the CA has a role to play within health outcomes in the region, especially looking at our responsibilities around transport, housing, skills, economic growth, which constitute the wider determinants of health. Next slide, please. And we want to, so the language of the text that has gone to DHSC on the back of what they sent us is what is being presented here. So we have not heard them come back and say yes or no on this, but I will highlight where there's potential substantive difference in terms of what they propose versus what we are just suggesting now. So we are going to go back to them with population health rather than population health improvement. This is a last minute change based on what BCC put forward, and it makes sense. Essentially, it is talking about a duty to improve the public's health and concurrent with local authorities. And it's very important to note that this does not supersede existing duties of partners or subservient to them. And it is about supporting systemic change in the region.
Yeah.
The thing that we have slightly changed here in the last line here is we will also explore how the government and CA can use their collective resources and expertise to develop and test innovative solution is what they propose. We've said develop a fund and test innovative solutions to shared prevention and population health priorities. Next slide, please. So this is where I mean where they've moved and started talking a little bit more about funding, and they're linking this to funding simplification, which is similar to what Greater Manchester is talking about. And so as part of government's commitment to funding simplification, government will also support the CA's ambition on exploring innovative ways to improve population health, address health disparities, and prevent ill health. So this is about joining up funding that's related to population health. Again, we'll take the improvement out of that. And under the duty, what we're suggesting is we can then do some regional action and for us to be ahead of the line when funding streams do come forward. And this is, in the words of Greater Manchester, is what is called funny money, which appears in government. And so we want to be ahead of the line on this one. Another key thing to note here is that new funding streams do not include new allocations from existing funds. Again, we've been very clear on this in terms of a red line for us not to local allocations. Next slide, please. So in terms of regional action, so the duty itself obviously is inward looking, but there is an opportunity to work as a region where the partners deem us to want to convene the region. The three areas that we have discussed previously and that the Wellbeing Board has seen and we've agreed about is about tackling obesity, tackling tobacco, and so we are talking about how we can come together for a healthier food environment for young people, establishing a regional tobacco alliance, using exploring the pilot using vaping as a quit tool, and to be an exemplar region for disabled people with disabilities, which is through the development of a pan-disability needs assessment. And we've had conversations with Cabinet Office where this can align with their work around the Disability Action Plan. I'm going to whiz through these and then hopefully we'll come back to the questions that are going to be there. So on data and digital, again, this is obviously there's a positive for the region that we have the first one of the first secure data environments in the country, and we have also worked and spoken to NHS partners about how we can improve the use of data in the region. And one of two pilots that we want to explore under this with NHS England and with local partners and with government is around empowering residents in the CA region to understand and use health data, and also secure funding and develop artificial intelligence lab. Again, the secure funding is the bit that we've added, but they did put down in their language that we'll work with NHS England to develop an AI lab. And the last bit, obviously, around integrated care records, that we will try and bring in resources to support the regional linkage of shared care records, which is already ongoing by our ICS partners. On workforce, you already heard Julie mention on the skills bit that the IPS model can be co-developed, so that we moved that section into the skills section. It used to be under this workforce area. So within workforce now, we're going to focus on developing a pilot where we can align funding with our local partners and our adult education budget to think about how we can tackle workforce shortages, and particularly look into boosting capacity within the voluntary sector. The last bit here is the next slide, please. The last section is the smart city region, where there has been positive news as we government has committed to 12.1 million in capital funding, supported by local revenue funding, which has also been agreed with our integrated care boards. And so this is looking very, very positive indeed. Obviously, the idea behind the Smart City region is that it will pioneer extension of preventive healthcare, remote monitoring, and community diagnosis. Bringing care closer to home is a key motto, and we'll obviously be working very, very closely with WM5G and our local health partners to make sure that it is impactful for the region. So I will stop there, but I will just to mention some next steps. Obviously, this is about taking the local input here at the Wellbeing Board. And as Julie mentioned, obviously, we are in fervent negotiations with government at the moment. We'll continue to push them on firmer language around funding. Julie's got a meeting with the Director General of OHID next week early, which might be slightly too late, so we're trying to move it as early as we can. And we are keen to get a sign off from DLUC and DHSC on the slight changes to the language that we put in. There is no indication yet of the announcement date. It was originally hoped for the budget announcement and is still hoped for that time, but we'll see.
We will see. We will see.
And just to make sure that we, once the text is agreed, it has to go through local governance processes, and we are committed to do that and committed to go through that. So, of course, and then discuss the implications for health in the region and what the CA board, Wellbeing Board, is going to look like going forward if we do indeed get a duty on health improvement. So I'll stop.
Thanks, Mubashir. Thanks very much. Julie, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary of where we and where we're pushing. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
And I'll bring Jasbir in just a moment. I just wanted to report back because I was at the Met's leaders meetings with the mayor on Friday morning when we were discussing this, and absolutely there was a clear concern that it's not quite there yet. The Trailblazer deal, there's a disappointment about the level of commitment, and particularly it's working across the government agencies, government departments, which is such a challenge. And what also came through loud and clear was the absolute concern that this should be new money. We don't want to see any double accounting on anything that, when we're talking about the deal, as and when, and hopefully it will come, it's not got to be based on monies already received. It has got to be new money. So there's much still to play for, and I think this week's going to be a critical week. But Jasbir.
I think either you already said it, that the concerns that the leaders have raised on Friday, and it's just reconfirming those, and that
Yes.
it, would want new monies to fund the new projects that we want to work on at the West Midlands Combined Authority. No, thank you.
Absolutely. And so too should we, I mean, if we're truly going to be a trailblazing deal, it needs to look trailblazing. And at this point, I think the leaders felt it's not looking trailblazing enough. So, but there's much at stake, because there are schemes in there. So it's we're probably at who blinks first at the moment.
Thank you.
But thank you both very much for that update, and I do think this week, next week, we're at sort of critical juncture, and I know that a lot of good efforts are being put in by officers to ensure that what we do get is something that we can be proud of in the area. Mubashir.
I just raised the hand for Councillor McCarthy.
Oh, thank you so much. Karen.
Thanks, Mubashir. I think this is very exciting, but new money means new relationships. And I think we need a little bit more time to work out the relationships with the ICBs, because the statutory relationships are really clear, and this is going to be something new, and we need to just make sure we've got it right, so that everybody feels that they're engaged in the right way. But apart from that, really positive.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And Mark.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe she shared the text with me last week, and I shared it with the two other ICBs. We've got some minor comments which we'll feed in outside of this meeting. But I think one of the points coming through is, for ICBs, we have multiple partnerships place, Black Country for me, Birmingham, etc. And making sure we take the time to think, as the point has just been made, about how we resource what might be new partnerships that clearly have got a benefit for the population of the West Midlands, and how we create that space for that to happen. So in the feedback, going back to Mubashir, that will be definitely one of the points that I'll be making. Yeah.
Point well made. And actually what I do think is potentially very exciting out of this is the area around data and digital. I know it doesn't sound the most exciting just in black and white, but actually it has potential to really change the way those relationships and the information that we can share across our sectors can lead to decision making based on evidence, and we can really perhaps change quite a lot of how we practice. So that could be very exciting. So there will be more to follow. Yes, Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add, there's a lot in here that if we can land it will be really great. It will be even greater if there is resourcing to support it. But I also want to share, I went to a workshop just over a week ago that was convened around becoming the disability exemplar region. And I think the board should be aware about kind of how depressing it was actually, how poorly we serve our disabled communities as a region. And from the members of those communities who were at the workshop really expressed how frustrated they are with the totality of the CA. It's not just the CA, it's also local authorities, but how far off good we are. And I think one of the things I would really encourage board to think about as we move forward in this is the kind of whizzy bang stuff can be really easy to get distracted by the innovation, but actually we're currently failing to get some of the basics in place. And that workshop was incredibly powerful. And I think if we move forward, it would be sensible at the board at some point to have a workshop with some of the participants from that session, because I certainly left both positive about the partnership we were starting to build, but also quite depressed about actually how poorly we serve those communities. And that has to be at the heart of what we're trying to achieve.
I think we should definitely log that one for a future agenda item once we've got through this particular sort of cycle that we've got. Lola.
Yes, just following up on Justin's comments there. I understand concerns about having new money, but I really think that we need to remember that this duty is an opportunity in itself, because it's about doing what we already do in a different way and having those levers to enable us to do that. And what Justin is talking about is what we already do. We need to change that. And so I just sort of, while yes, it's really important to get new additional resource, it's actually really important to do what we're doing in a different way and really bring to life the commitment of the Wellbeing Board and the CA to taking a health in all policies approach. It means using what we've got, our funding, in a different way to make a difference to our communities.
I think that's a good reflection, and I think, you know, if we can build towards a workshop, actually it would be a very powerful message for us all to think about how we're working now and how we're spending money and whether there's a better way to do that. And I think that would be a really good idea. So perhaps one for the future that we could put on the agenda, Mubashir. Okay. I'm going to then move us on to the first paper that we've got, which is the Commonwealth Games Legacy. This is the contingency funds. And I think, Simon, you're going to take us through this. Are you?
Yeah, I'm just switching the laptop on.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much.
So things to move on. It's now called the Commonwealth Games Enhancement Fund.
Right.
Contingency. And you have a paper today, and I'm just going to rattle through a couple of the headlines there. And we'll be seeking discussion around our proposals going forward.
Thank you.
So a paper went to the CA board in December, set out this investment potential and the allocation of funds across 4 pillars. Really grateful to the chair in pushing that there is a CA commitment across those 4 pillars to reduce inequalities and improve health. And we're seeing some traction in that area as well. But I want to pick up in terms of our thinking and our timescales around that wellbeing allocation of 4.07 million. And by that wellbeing allocation within that wellbeing and sustainability pot, we are looking at a budget of 2.86 million, covering specifically wellbeing. The rest of that sustainability money is going towards the extension of the CA's Green Grants programme. And we're working alongside that team to look at ways in which we improve health and reduce health inequalities. What's outlined in your paper is that we do have 5 investment principles that we are working on to ensure that we get the maximum return from that investment, working with partners across the health system. And a particular emphasis around the importance of getting the Wellbeing Board's agreement on the way in which we're taking this forward. So I'm going to pick up around sport and physical activity. See, this is very much around like a double devolution potential of investment coming into CA and investment going out to the Commonwealth Games, Commonwealth active communities. And these projects, these place-based working projects, were at the forefront of the Commonwealth Games physical activity legacy, for which were initially funded by Sport England. Our intention is to take that work beyond its funding period of 31st of December this year into a future financial years, investing in those 4 place-based Commonwealth active communities, Solihull, led by Solihull Council. Black Country Moving, collaboration between Active Black Country and the 4 local authorities in the Black Country targeting key locations. Coventry, led by Coventry City Council, called Coventry Moves, and Birmingham, which is a collaboration between the Active Wellbeing Society, the City Council, Sport Birmingham, Canals and Rivers Trust and Schools. As I said, led by Sport Birmingham as the funding partner of Sport England grant. We begin to explore with those Commonwealth Active communities around where are those areas where we can take the learning from existing practice to take this work forward. Is there opportunity to look at real behaviour change opportunities around instigating, getting more people walking, using digital as that tool, that vehicle to enable behaviour change? And how could we take forward the recommendations from the West Midlands Mental Health Commission around sport and physical activities, which Jed will pick up a bit later. Key to that is looking at ways in which we extend the evaluation that currently exists, funded by Sport England and contracted to Sheffield Hallam University, to begin to understand what has been the impact, what has been the change, what has been the causal relationship between the Commonwealth Active communities and place-based change in those localities. We met with Sheffield Hallam University on Friday alongside Sport England to see how we can begin to work through what would be that procurement route, what would be the opportunities to take forward the learning that's currently gained from the evaluation into that next stage. We know there's a national interim evaluation report that's imminent, which will give us that first indications around what has been the impact of that Commonwealth Active Communities investment. And also, July the 27th, not far away, is going to be the first anniversary of the Games. So we want to work with Birmingham City Council and other partners to see if we can begin to have that celebratory event around celebrating the success of what was the most inclusive and accessible games we had in this country. But that's not all the work we're doing. Based on the work we're doing with local authorities around health improvement and reducing health inequalities, and the emerging work around integrated care boards, we want to begin to see if we can pump prime some investment to begin to look at some interventions which highlight the value of physical activity improving health outcomes. How do we begin to see if there's potential to look at ways in which we're encouraging more active hospitals, how we begin to see the role of physical activity in secondary care treatment? This is very much an innovator and a starter to begin to see where we can gain some traction moving forward. What is key with all this investment is that investment has to be delivered by 31st of March 2025. But we want to get this right on this small amount of investment, but significant investment, to see how it accompanies, aligns to local needs and priorities. And we're just starting to broker some work and discussions there with partners. We've spent quite a bit of time today talking about the mental health commissions and priorities and investment, but this gives an outline in terms of what some of our intentions are moving forward. So to support that, we're looking at some investment into the CAE around that delivery coordination. How do we begin to realise some of the opportunities that it brings? How do we begin to look at that portfolio of projects and what that's telling us in terms of what we need to do in terms of our work as a convener, as an enabler for that investment? And how do we take that learning forward across our health devolution potential, for example? Some timescales is we're putting together our programme business case, which will go to through internal submission on the March 24th. We're exploring, particularly because of that opportunity around the Commonwealth Games anniversary, to see if we can get some upfront funding to enable that to be delivered. And I'm meeting with the City Council, Commonwealth Games and sports team this week to begin to explore that. And the intention will be that those detailed proposals will go to the CA board and be submitted in June. Here gives us an indication what some of that start times that we would like to see and taking work forward. So the opportunity, in summary, the opportunity we have it's a small amount of funding, but there's a real opportunity to use that investment to build on what's been going on currently, particularly around the Commonwealth Act communities. An opportunity to discuss later around the Mental Health Commission. But how do we begin to forge and collaborate more with local partners and local authorities and ICBs around that kind of investment to realise the benefits of physical activity within secondary healthcare pathway? Any points, Julie?
Simon, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's fair to say that, you know, when you look at the money there is available and the legacy and the amounts that have been allocated to different parts, you know, it's a little disappointing that Wellbeing has received only just over 4 million in this, because I do think that what we could do and what we could achieve if we really turn people's lives around would have a significant impact on many of the other areas as well, just by actually mindset changing that and doing our best. However, I've pushed the point at least on 2 occasions with the leaders groups and with the West Midlands Combined Authority, and you know what I think we have got is a commitment that through certainly some of the other areas, and particularly I want to talk about the inclusive communities area, that we might be able to get some flex around that, which will help to see some more support for the areas that we believe in our board are important to people and communities. So with that, I know officers have been working with those other sectors to try to see how we can sort of try and make a difference as well. So I'm happy now to open up to comments from board members or questions to Simon. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I've talked with Simon and the team offline about this, and I'm supporting in generally the overall approach. I think the point, just to reiterate, which I made at last board meeting as well, in terms of the active communities, is being really clear that ahead of the decision to fund further is seeing the interim evaluation and demonstrating that these interventions are actively reducing inactivity, and that inactivity reduction is sustained. And that's similarly being part of the evaluation that's proposed, is that's looking at longitudinal behaviour change, because my concern is lots of activity, but a lot of it's taster events, one-offs, and there's very little evidence from what I've seen so far coming through that has led to either people regularly participating in sport or achieving more than 30 minutes of physical activity a week, which would get them to a threshold of improving and reducing their risk on their way to the 150 minutes. So I suppose in terms of the decisions made today that are then taken forward to the board, that second phase of funding needs to be contingent on demonstrating. And in that second phase, because I recognise that there wasn't in the time frame that we had ability to build all the evaluation up front, but it is a much more explicit strand of what's being funded to demonstrate that shift out of less than 30 minutes to above 30 minutes.
And that's always going to be the challenge for us, isn't it? Is having enough lead-in time to actually start to demonstrate that change agenda, and that people, you know, and that it's embedded and there is continuity in it, which is actually what's going to make the difference. But you're absolutely right. So I think, you know, action plan and continuous assessment, continuous evaluation is a critical factor. So Lola and then Adam, if I may.
Thank you. Just 2 points. I would really buttress the point that Justin has made. I think it's really important. And I think also it's really making sure that those projects are actually reaching the communities that we'd set out to reach in the first instance. So we need to understand the demography of who's getting involved in these different areas. But I just wanted to go back to a point that you made earlier around the distribution of the funding. And I just wondered what is being put in place to ensure that even in the other pillars that actually we're doing the things that the CA is committed to in terms of our most disadvantaged communities. I do think that there needs to be some challenge in there about how that funding is being used to ensure that it's helping to close the gap.
Absolutely, a question that I asked at the time, and certainly I'll get. Mubashir, do you want to come back on that now, or
let Adam come in first, and then we can answer all.
Shall I do that? Okay, Adam.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So yeah, I really wanted to pick up on, I suppose, on a couple of things really. In terms of the Commonwealth Active Communities model, I think it's important to recognise what the intention from the outset was, and that was to try and move away from isolated small-scale interventions and to try and build a stronger collaboration of the different partners and stakeholders that create the environment or policy environment which affects how people are going about living their day-to-day lives. So the importance here in these collaborations is the range of stakeholders that are involved that will work in a more joined up way to create a longer term sustainable change. And that's so when you see the interim evaluation report is very much focused on some of those relationships and those enabling factors, alongside obviously the what's going on the ground in terms of actual interventions. In terms of the actual interventions themselves, then a number of those interventions were based on the best available evidence that we had to support them. So they include the evidence around modal shift walking and cycling, some of the other evaluated interventions around connecting people through things like active streets and the like. The point that Lola was flagging there in terms of the geographies and the audience, the very clear focus for all four was starting with the issues around tackling inactivity and associated inequalities that affect people's ability to be physically active. And the geographies of those tend to reflect where the issues and difficulties are of most significance. So in somewhere like the Black Country, it's the three, each of the four Black Country local authorities have got three of their most deprived wards, which are the focus for this work. So there are 12 priority wards for Black Country, for example. There are 5 wards in Birmingham, which through a whole series of data analysis have identified those areas of greatest need. And then within that geography, a focus, as I say, around tackling inactivity at the heart of this. So I think we've just got the interim report in from Sheffield Hallam University. I think in and of itself, it won't necessarily detail the answer to the question of individual interventions, because it wasn't intended to do that. What we have also got in place, and later in the spring we'll have the next cut of the Active Lives survey being published, and we're going to do some further detailed analysis of that, breaking that down between the lead up to the Commonwealth Games and immediately post Commonwealth Games at a local as well as at a regional level, to see what that's told us about the value and impact of the major event itself being hosted, and also in terms of what's happened subsequently in communities. So I just thought it might be helpful just to sort of share a bit of context in terms of the background and the direction of travel for what the CACs are intending to do.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. And I think we were asked to make any comments on this paper ahead, and my particular comments back were effectively that, you know, if you're going to make lifestyle changes to people, you really need to start with younger people, and you need to be trying to embed a change agenda at that stage. So for me, it's quite important how we might be addressing generations to come, so that we're not creating continuation of the same problems that we face now. So, but Mubashir, you were going to come back.
Again, first, I think Councillor McCarthy has her hand raised.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what's been said already about building on what has already been identified as working, and the areas where it works best is really important, so that we are building on what's already being done in terms of those particular areas, and obviously starting early in schools, in preschool settings, but also using that to get to the wider family, to build activity in areas where it's not part of the everyday. I do wonder if we need to strengthen the role of public health in the processes, just to make sure that we are building on what is known to be effective. It's that balance, isn't it, always, between what's already out there and having an opportunity to innovate. But I think if we can involve public health a little more than the report indicates, that would probably pay off.
Thank you. Thank you. Mubashir, back to you. Or is it Simon, actually? I think really probably at this point, isn't it, Simon? Sorry, you know, these comments are directed on the paper and how we're going. And do you have any comments on them, Simon?
I do, but I'll pass on to Julie first.
If you don't mind, if I just pick up, because I think just the board know that there was a very robust discussion at Mayor and Portfolio Needs about the overall legacy programme and various items of spend. So being very, very candid with you, we've been charged of going away and looking at all the activities. There were the priorities that leaders felt hadn't been properly reflected. I think within that, and very much hopefully the spirit of what this board has said, making sure that wellbeing is present in other pillars, maybe a route to help some of that. So for example, on the employment support, I think one of the things we might expect, it might get covered later, is mental health barriers to accessing employment. So could we pick up things there? In the inclusive community section and the grant section there, could that be another route for doing it? So again, just to let people know, there may be some changes over the next few days following on from feedback on Friday, so we will keep you posted, but really helpful to get your thoughts and comments. And I think in particular, making sure that those other pillars work hard with this agenda as well.
And back to that point, because it was one that was raised, and back to that point, it was about also, and it picks up on one of the comments, evaluating what the other boards are achieving as well, and making sure that, you know, we're getting best value from it, and where we would hope to see some benefit for the wellbeing element, that evaluation of the other allocations will help us to see if we're changing the dial on that. Okay. Yeah. Who's that? Is that Mubashir, or is that?
It's me.
Yeah.
It's my own hand. So I just want to come back on the point about evaluation. I absolutely agree that it needs to be robust. It needs to be evidence-based, and we'll work with Adam, and we'll work with Sport England. We'll work with the Sheffield Hallam University to make sure that these local programs are actually based on local needs and evidence, and we'll definitely have to involve public health in that. a key player, and the whole idea, I think we noted specifically that the idea is to double devolve this down to local authority areas, and that's through these CACs. And we are in discussions with the local directors of public health to make sure that their input is key in taking these forward. So if we can build in a continuous evaluation element within that hopefully specifies that we'll work with local public health to shape these, I think that would satisfy that point, hopefully. And in suggestion of other areas that we're trying to influence, certainly we've been working, as we've outlined in the paper, with inclusive communities pillar, with economy pillar, on how we can bring in more influence on health and well-being within those. So we'll carry on doing that, and as soon as we have an update, we'll share the final, I suppose, the final version of this paper with board. Following this meeting, incorporating all of the comments. One other comment that we did receive beforehand was from Lola about this very point around involving public health expertise. Yeah. So I'm hoping that this sort of covers that, although Lola's point was slightly different, but I think that would be quite challenging to do to try and fund public health expertise through this, given the small amount that we have. Yeah. So I will stop there and see if Simon has anything else to add and move into the Sporting Land paper as well.
I'm sitting in the corner, so
Simon, just before you do round off, Lola did pop her hand up for a second, I think, just to probably emphasize her point. Can we just go to her and then I'll come back to you?
I hear what Mubashir is saying, but I think my challenge is really, given the breadth of the work that the CA is doing, it's not really just about a public health person to focus on well-being. Actually, in other CAs, they've got public health teams working across the work of the CA, and it's really about how best you take forward your health in all policies approach and get that expertise across everything that you're doing. So that's the point. It's not just about well-being. Actually, it's about the totality of the work.
Thank you for emphasising that point. So Simon.
Yeah, quickly to sum up, I agree with Lola's point, and it's a piece that we are actually doing across transport and housing more and more. I'm really grateful for Justin's input in terms of some of our thinking around housing currently, and with the OHID team, particularly around what we've been doing around influencing health in all transport policies, both particularly around the local transport plan. Obviously, we need to profile that a lot more. Public health steer partnerships around the Commonwealth Games Wellbeing investment, absolute. If we need to forge and strengthen that in places where it needs to be fit. It's remiss of me to provide the paper to wellbeing boards around the Commonwealth active communities, their geographies and purpose, and we'll get that circulated with the minutes today. I'm really keen to work in collaboration with public health and OHID around that evaluation steps moving forward to get it right, because the route of reporting on its impact will be back through to the Wellbeing Board in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have got the recommendations there, but as we are not for it, I will be taking those through. But they're really rich discussion about that, which will help to inform us when I take that through to the Combined Authority for final approval. But thank you all very much for your input on that. Okay, I'm going to move us then on to the next agenda item, which is the Mental Health Commission. So we've got Danielle, which is really great as well. But shall I start, Jed, with you? Would you like to introduce this?
Chair, I think we missed one agenda item there.
Have I? Have I skipped? Oh yeah, sorry, mental health.
It's the Sporting Land partnership.
Well, I haven't got it on my papers. But can we take that? I'm sorry. The papers that I'm working on, which Tanya sent, haven't got the Sport England partnership on it, but I'm very happy to take that now. working in the dark because I haven't got it on the agenda. So can I ask who's taking that forward?
It will be Simon and Adam. Adam.
Oh, it's probably back up on the agenda, but not papered. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yes, I'm sorry, go back, got it. Simon, yes, thank you.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to provide an update here. Apologise, it's me again, but this is going to be a great double act with Adam Ricklesford from Sport England in terms of where we are in developing our partnership. At our December board meeting, we discussed some of the kind of emerging thoughts as a board around where do we want to see that partnership go. Particularly this I think it was razor light rather than razor sharp, but I like razor sharp. Focus on what we're going to do in that partnership to reduce levels of physical inactivity, which accompanies our commitment around reducing health inequalities. We talked through in terms of where we want to see some of those shared outcomes through our respective partnership, not least around how we're going to join forces to begin to look at how we're working across the system to reduce those levels of physical inactivity and health inequalities. Critical for the development of our partnership and bringing that to the board is understanding where Sport England is going and where it's focused moving forward and why this is an opportunity. And I'm going to pass over to Adam, who's going to talk through that on the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So from a Sport England perspective, developing a stronger relationship with the Combined Authority and constituent partners is really important to us. It's a great opportunity for us to build on the place-based investment that we've made over the last probably more than 5 years. I'm thinking the last 5 years in the context of the current direction of travel for us, which has been very much a place-based model over that period of time. And we've got significant investment still live around Commonwealth Games and the legacy work there. We continue to invest in our Birmingham Solihull local delivery pilot, and there's significant investment that's gone into facility infrastructure, sector leadership, and then grassroots community development, particularly through the pandemic, through things like our Together Fund and Tackling Inequalities Fund. So we've got a lot going on across the patch to build upon. And in January 2021, we launched our current strategy, a 10-year strategy called Uniting the Movement, which has got an unequivocal focus and commitment on increasing activity, reducing inactivity. Particular focus within that of targeting those that are in greatest need and furthest away from being able to access sport and physical activity opportunity, and to deliver on the range of benefits that we know that having an active lifestyle can give to people, whether that be in their own well-being, self-confidence, and mental well-being, physical well-being, social connectedness, reducing isolation, etc. And a particular focus, and just picking up on, Chair, what you referenced earlier around the importance of starting with a focus on young people and giving them a great start in life, which includes developing physical literacy and a lifetime positive attitude towards a physical activity lifestyle. And very much focused now on doing that in a more joined up place-based whole system approach. And this notion of a whole system is something that's been growing momentum across the public sector in the last few years. And from our perspective, very much builds on this notion that we can invest into single small-scale interventions, but when you add those small-scale interventions up, they don't always deliver a population-wide shift. So working more collaboratively to address some of the systemic issues that affect people's ability to be regularly physically active, which brings us into a whole range of other policy areas, is really important in this work. Thanks, Simon. So over the last few months, we've been in dialogue around developing a memorandum of understanding between Sport England and the CA. And that's a work in progress at the moment, but it's very much about aligning our ambition in Uniting the Movement with the CA's plan for growth, and building off the findings of the Health of the Region report, particularly focusing on improving the health of the most vulnerable in the region through increasing physical activity and the contribution that physical activity and active lifestyle can make. It's about a framework for how we work together around tackling inactivity and recognising that in order for this to be effective, we need to be working at a number of layers of the system, right from grassroots community through localities into the CA in a joined up and consistent way. And we're looking at a long-term ambition and commitment here up to 2031, which is the current lifetime for our strategy at Uniting the Movement, because we recognise, I think this was referenced earlier again as well, the change to both systems and to the culture and approach to physical activity isn't going to happen overnight. We're not going to see a step change, in 12, 24 months. So this is a longer term approach. So buying ourselves a longer term period to develop what's needed to create that shift is important. And we're working at the moment around some agreed priorities, which will be focused in key areas of the region to support those that are least active and where the biggest gains from a wellbeing and health perspective can be achieved.
So what we begin to see in our discussions is some emerging priorities, and those emerging priorities very much complementing the work we're looking at around our health devolution ask, particularly around where we begin to look at that health in all policies approach, working with the system. So what we begin to look at areas like digital, alongside that health and policy work, and some real practical stuff that we could do to encourage that long-term behaviour change. Absolutely, none of this, these priorities are going to be done in isolation of partners. What we see is there's quite a bit of dialogue, facilitation, emerging alignment of strategic priorities in this space as we take this forward. We think this is really exciting. It would enable us to push forward our agenda. It would enable us to work better as a system across the region to begin to influence current practice, influence policy and change where needed by working together as a single system in the region. Adam, did you want to pick up in your next steps?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So from a Sport England perspective, we have a paper that goes to our full board on the 28th of March, setting out the ambition here and seeking their endorsement. And then we'll be working a detailed delivery action plan at officer level with colleagues from the CA thereafter, with the intention of doing some kind of launch after the local election restrictions period is finished in May.
And equally, we will want to bring a paper back to our board in terms of that detail and that expectation to align to that profile launch in the summer 2023. That gives the headlines, Chair, and welcome any questions and any observations.
Thank you very much for that and for laying out the time frame that is anticipated. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and I really welcome it. And I think two things to kind of flag. One, my hope is that this enables us to work as a region much more connectedly with Sport England, particularly around how the various investments from Sport England interact and play out across the region. And that's really exciting, because I think it's something certainly Adam and I and Simon have talked about before. And it will help us to see the totality of the investment on both for Sport England and for the CA and its local authority partners. So I think that's a really important part of the jigsaw. The question I suppose I have for Adam is, in the MOU landscape, does that help in terms of the kind of financial flow of money, does it make it easier now, once we have an MOU in place, for that partnership to really realise some of the ambition? Because it one of the challenges is that kind of continual cycle of different pots of money to bid for, apply, and I just wonder how this plays out in that financial part of the world.
Yeah, Adam.
Thanks for that, Justin. Yes, it should do. In the conversation that we've been having, it does include investment, both an immediate investment, and then what does a longer term investment as the priorities start to shape up look like. So part of the paper that we'll be taking to our board will be aiming to secure some investment into the contingency budget, which we were describing earlier, and so some shared outcomes around that. But then as we get further and deeper into the action planning in the longer term priorities and an approach, then obviously some of that is going to require joint investment as well. So we'll be working up the detail of that.
Yeah, and hopefully if we've got a shaped plan, we might be able to attract some external investment as well towards these schemes, which I think would be that would be a goal worth achieving. Yeah,
Chair. So I suppose the Justin's 100% right in terms of how do the layers of investment join up here, because sporting, as an organisation that manages lottery sports, and we will invest at the grassroots community level as well as at the local authority and CA level. The important thing is going to be that there is a continuity as part of an overall plan and ambition, that the investment at the various layers is part of a bigger picture, if you like, rather than isolated.
Yeah, fantastic. Very exciting. Mubashir, or whoever.
It's me, so she's got a job to do.
Yeah. Hand up.
And just to add to that, and thanks to Adam and colleagues, I think we're really keen to make sure that we're aligning all investment wherever possible, so we're complementing value, not duplicating. I think there's certainly work within the CA that we can do more of, the links to things like our active travel, skills budgets, housing, as Simon's already touched on, making sure that they're all aligned, but hopefully using this board as well to really bring that out to partners as well, so we're getting the most of our investment and having that impact.
Absolutely, that makes complete sense, and it's the theme of the morning, I think, really. So yeah, great. Any more to add, Simon? Adam?
No, thank you, Chair.
No. Well, thank you very much for that, and we look forward to seeing the fruits of your progress on that. It'd be really exciting. Okay, so right, I am now going on to the Mental Health Commission. So apologies for jumping the gun a little bit on that. And I think we've got both Danielle and Jed. I don't know, Jed, whether you want to start it, and Danielle, I'm sure you will be giving us, a really useful update on where we are.
Thanks, Sissy. Actually, we're going to do it the other way around, if that's
okay. Are
okay.
you? Perfect. Yes, I'll leave it to you to decide then.
So, first of all, I would just like to express my appreciation and gratitude to the Combined Authority for convening and facilitating the Commission. They have allocated some really fine officers who have supported the work fantastically, and we have worked together with partners from a really wide range of organisations and partnerships for just under a year. So we started in April last year. And we've been very, very clear that whilst the Commission has been hosted and facilitated by the Combined Authority, so it's very much an independent Commission. That said, we want to make sure that the recommendations and the work that we take forward is very much adding value and aligning to what's happening already, and not completely cutting across, because we think that's the best way to have impact and be sustainable in our approach. So I know that the Health and Wellbeing Board has had an update previously. So we have got to the point now in January where we looked at our last set of themes and started to draw together a draft for the report and for the recommendations. You'll see from the paper that for each of the themes, we looked at some quite detailed evidence information from a wide range of sources. We also looked at some best practice and then came up with a number of recommendations against each theme. There's work ongoing to refine that down to prioritise within the priorities, so that the aim is that we end up with about 12 main priorities that enable partners across the region to really focus on. The idea is that the recommendations will really be about how we can work together to promote health and well-being in the mental health space across the whole region. Some of those recommendations may be directed towards the integrated care boards with their role to commission particular health services. But we're very much focused on the broader wellbeing agenda. There'll be recommendations that are directed towards the Combined Authority with its convening role and influencing role. And we've also identified a number of projects, around 7 projects, that we feel that the Combined Authority could support and use its position of influence to demonstrate, this is how it's done. But it's essentially not about cutting across the statutory responsibilities of other organisations. It's really about testing some things out, doing some innovation, and demonstrating what could be achieved together. I'll hand over to Jed now to go into a little bit more detail.
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. So in terms of the paper, you'll see under section 2.6, the 6 topics that the Commission explored over the period of the Commission's work. So you'll see children and young people and education, sports and physical activities, which has already been touched on in the meeting, mental health implications of the cost of living crisis, which was done in conjunction with the core group of the Health of the Region team, looking at what constitutes mentally thriving communities, racial inequalities in mental health, what works for whom and why, done in conjunction and in liaison with the Race Equalities Task Force, and finally looking at the contribution of the voluntary community and faith sector in meeting mental health needs, particularly having a focus on what works for women and girls. In relation to all of these 6 topics, the idea was trying to get a sense of what the impact has been of the pandemic on mental health and wellbeing, what the response has been in terms of trying to support and meet those needs, what good practice has looked like in relation to meeting those needs. And as Danielle has highlighted, trying to co-develop a series of actionable recommendations to help the pursuit of a mentally healthier region and also to tackle health inequalities. So that has been the overall approach. Topic summaries, I'm not going to go through the detail, are from page 29 onwards, which give exactly that, the findings, the good practice examples, and some recommendations. And it's just important to emphasize, this is just a very headline summary. There's much more detail that sits underneath this. Yeah. I think getting to the meat of this, what emerged from the Commission discussions were some indicative implementation project ideas, which start from page 36 of the papers. And in terms of some of the principles that sit behind those conversations, those discussions of Commission members, there was, as Danielle has highlighted, an aspiration to be bold, recognising that whilst the mental health system is a good system, mental health is in crisis across not just the region, but nationally. So it was important, it was felt, to be bold. In addition to that, it's also important to be pragmatic, as Danielle said, trying to maintain or maximise the strategic alignment of whatever emerges in terms of implementation projects with locally developing or developed work, thinking about how we can build on local work, good local work, thinking about how we can plug gaps, either in work or knowledge, and thinking about how we can support innovation. So adding value was quite a big area of importance as well. A focus on addressing mental health inequalities was another key theme that supported the thinking. And finally, thinking about co-development. It was thought to be really, really important that whilst the Commission members were drawn from a wide range of areas of expertise, as Danielle has said, we still thought it's really, really important that as projects were developed, they needed to be locally owned and developed. So the principle of co-development also was seen to be really important and linked to legacy and sustainability as well. So there are 7 projects, potential implementation projects that have been identified that have emerged thus far from the Commission's thinking, which start on page 38.
Yes.
So the first one, just whipping through them really quickly, is looking at how we might further enhance or develop a whole school or whole college approach to mental health. And that's not just thinking about the mental health of learners, of pupils and students, but also thinking about the mental health and well-being of the workforce, and also thinking about all the infrastructure that exists in schools and colleges, for example, curricula, and also the ecosystem of children and young people, their families, their networks, etc., and how those might be positively impacted by an enhanced approach. Also drawing on what's already good, because we already know, for example, there's a lot of good work taking place in schools and colleges, not least with the mental health support teams and some bespoke individual work that colleges are doing. So how can we build on that good work as well? And one particular theme, again, that I wanted to emphasize was the idea of having a zero exclusion approach to the work, and how we make sure that there's a systematic inclusion approach to children and young people in relation to mental health difficulties. So that's kind of a flavour of the first topic area. Second one I'm not going to go into detail of because it links to the Commonwealth Games work, but fundamentally what the principle is to develop a piece of work around how we strengthen the contribution of sports and physical activities to supporting good mental health and well-being. And there's a number of different kind of potential project areas. Sam's already touched on one of them, but just emphasising the point that Danielle made about ICBs. How can we make sure that, for example, we systematically build in physical activities into support for people waiting for mental health support treatment, but also how can it be an essential core element of healthcare pathways? So that's an example of a theme that came out of those discussions. The third area was reinforcing the role of the voluntary community faith sector in meeting diverse unmet mental health needs, and voluntary community sector was a theme that came out of I think all of the conversations that the Commission had. Particularly one, again, key area was how do we make sure that we make the voluntary community sector and faith sector organisations much more robust and sustainable, and that links to funding. So, for example, social value in procurement and how that we can use that as a lever, but also how can we support their capacity through, for example, a regional infrastructure organisation, or looking at the role of statutory sector organisations in supporting their capacity, their infrastructure, and providing them with advice. So that's an example of what falls under that project. The fourth one relates specifically to how we address or continue to address racial inequalities in mental health. And again, this was done in liaison with the Racial Equality Task Force. And one area that came out quite strongly was how we might recruit, train, develop further cohorts of mental health practitioners from racialized communities to build that diverse workforce, but also how we can make sure that that workforce lands in a workplace that is supportive and enabling, and also there's routes into more diverse leadership positions as well. So that's an example. And Another example linked specifically to the work of the Race Equalities Task Force is how we can co-develop mental health awareness campaigns for diverse communities to tackle stigma. So that's another example of kind of what this project might tackle. Fifth project area is linked to how we support and create a mental health economic inclusion strategy and plan for people in the region, particularly those with mental ill health. And that links to the point that Julie made earlier on in relation to how do we tackle barriers for people with mental health difficulties into employment, into training, etc. Two particular key points that came out of this conversation at the Commission were how we co-develop and amplify a regional strategy to deliver a real living wage right across the region and have large public and private sector organisations as the kind of early implementers for that. So how can we have that as a campaign across the region and a reality across the region? A second key area was also how we make sure that there's an amplified regional strategy and plan for social value and procurement. So we're putting money, using our procurement power to put money in the pocket of local organisations and local people. Sixth project related to how we have mental health in all policies. So it links to the conversation that was had earlier on in terms of health in all policies. We wanted to be quite specific in terms of how we have mental health in all policies. So any key decisions that are being made, how we make sure that mental health is explicitly formally considered as part of the decision-making process, and how we in the CA or other key organisations in the region actually develop that approach and actually implement it. So it's good practice across the region. And the final project was how, again, touching on the point that Justin made earlier on about disabled people and meeting their needs in a better way, how we can develop learning for building on good practice locally, a more effective approach to meeting the needs of children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities by specifically improving EHCP processes in addressing mental health inequalities. So what does that look like? And I know we know there's a lot of good work taking place across the region in tackling this, but how can we make sure that we're an exemplar in this area and piloting something? So those are the implementation project ideas. In terms of the next steps for the Commission, under 7.1, we're collating further stakeholder feedback in relation to the emergent findings, recommendations, also the indicative project areas. We need to put together a business case for those projects by the 24th of March as the first stage to go into the WMCA governance processes. We then will continue to work on the detailed report, which we intend to be available probably at the end of May now, being more realistic, and to jointly launch the Commission report with Danielle leading that with the Mayor in late May or early June. So that's the headlines.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Can I just congratulate you, Danielle, on this report, which I think is a really, a fantastic report, and it's very user friendly as well. It just lays it all out, gives the impacts, looks at the options, and I think it's a really helpful guide for us to move forward. It absolutely depends on strengthened relationships and partnerships, which I think are a given in so many of these tricky issues that we have to face with local authorities. But it's a great report and it's a good read, really good read. So I'll open up for discussions as well. And Jasbir's first.
Thank you, Izzy. I echo what you just said about the report. It's very well laid out, very clear. I just wanted to pick up on the point 4 project to look at further address racial inequalities. I think, are we going to also look at the culture, recognising there's the culture in different races and understand that, because that's very important in how we actually tackle mental health and with different groups. So that was my sort of just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, that's an important point, rather than treating it as one single homogenous. You know, it's all that interreaction as well. And Mubashir, is that you or someone else?
Thank you. So I absolutely echo the chair's remarks around the report and the work that's been done. The chair of the Mental Health Commission been kind to congratulate the officers involved as well. So well done to the team. The work is not done. There's plenty of things to do in terms of the implementation projects. And just to come back to the point Councillor Jezebel just raised around culture, one of the things that Jed's pointed out in the report is that around the racial inequalities agenda, we worked with the Race Equalities Task Force. And one of the key things that we are working with them on is a culturally intelligent health system that we could promote and that we could facilitate and support. So certainly that is part of the discussions in terms of how we take this work forward. So absolutely, cultural relevance, cultural intelligence is quite important in the health system and certainly within the mental health system. And just the other point that I wanted to say was in terms of the implementation projects, really keen to get your support on that.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth Games paper as well in terms of what we take forward to the CA board on the 17th. So any comments on that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. Jasper, did you want to come back?
No, sorry, no,
Sorry,
that's,
okay,
I welcome that. Is
yeah,
my hand down? Hasn't it been put down? Sorry.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. I think that the thing that strikes me very much is the you know, there are groups of people and you identify the those with SEND and how we can address them, and you know, they're going to be there are going to be issues perhaps that we need to address for a long time with them. And I think you know, these are the obvious customers of the future. And what I probably want to also ask a question about is there are people who at later stages in life run into mental health issues and finding it easy to come forward. And actually, I mean, one of our biggest cohort groups, or one of the cohort groups, is middle-aged men, really, who face mental health problems and how they deal with it. And it's feeling confident that you've got a listening ear and that you can come forward and you can address these problems in a safe space. So all of that for me is about partnerships and absolutely understanding, Danielle, what you were saying, that this isn't about replicating what councils are doing, but it's about building those partnerships and strengthening them so that we have a real clear pathway on how we address mental health in oh so many groups. You know, Jasby has talked eloquently about groups. I've addressed young groups, but also older groups, and I think the answer is this is something that can strike anybody, but it is a life-changing issue, and if we don't help and support, it costs individuals, families, and groups more harm and trouble than we can if we deal with it early. So any comments on that you'd like to come back on, either Danielle or Jed?
Thanks, Izzy. I think just to say that the focus on promoting well-being as a broader issue and the emphasis on including and empowering communities, voluntary sector organisations, community groups and faith organisations. I think that really plays to the points that several of you have made about particular groups either not recognising themselves within the services, not wanting to come forward. and trying to create an environment where people are able to seek out support for mental health and wellbeing needs.
Mubashir, your hand's up. I don't know if it's you or someone else.
It's Julie this time.
No?
Yeah, just to say that obviously the findings have been discussed with the mayor as well, who's very supportive, I think.
Brilliant.
Of travel. Clearly, we've got to look at how we can resource some of these things, but it's helpful to note that again, a really good piece of work and some important lessons for us to take forward as well. So thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great to hear. Really value that. So we're looking forward to the next steps, and I gather that you're looking to launch the Commission report in May of this year. Is that right?
Might be early June, but yes.
Okay. Lovely. Well, we'll very much look forward to that, and I'm sure we will see the full and final report as it comes forward. But this is a fantastic start, and we're very grateful for the work that you've all done. Thank you so much, and I think it looks very comprehensive. Okay. Right. I see no more hands on this, so I'm going to. I take it that we can now move on then to the improving health and reducing inequalities. Is that right? Let me just check the agenda. Yes, that is right. Improving health and reducing inequalities. So this is our combined authority programme, and I think Mubashir, are you taking this forward for us, or Grace? Grace, I see you popped up, so it must be Grace.
Yes, indeed. So Grace will go through the totality of it. I'm just going to introduce this and link it back to where we started from. Basically, this was obviously on the back of the piece of work that we did with GLA and GM, funded by Health Foundation, around exploring what combined authorities can do in order to leverage their powers to have an impact on health inequalities. Something which is a running theme, as you can tell from all of the things we're trying to do. So it was quite an enabling project, and the final report and the outputs were certainly exploratory in the sense of what is the art of the possible. And the Health Foundation has since, and we've reported to the board before, obviously, that we did receive the funding from the Health Foundation to take this forward for another 3 years. This is a new version of the program. It is bigger. It is across multiple CAs, and it is being hosted and led by the West Midlands Combined Authority. The purpose here, obviously, I'll let Grace take us through that, but just to kind of give a context of where this is coming from and how high profile we think this piece of work is, and how important it will be, again, for the Combined Authority in its journey towards wanting to make impact on health outcomes. So I'll let Grace come in and talk us through some of the key points from the paper.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mubashir, and thanks for having me today. So I'll just pull out some of the key aspects within the paper submitted. So the West Mid CA will be receiving 1.3 mil from the Health Foundation to deliver this programme of work, leading a current consortium of 8 combined authorities. So the high level aim is to support combined authorities to be more effective in tackling health inequalities. So this is primarily through providing additional capacity across the combined authorities involved in the programme. So I'll just touch upon who those combined authorities are. So it's of course ourselves, Greater London, Greater Manchester, Liverpool, North of Tyne, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and Tees Valley. And we're really hoping to unlock the potential of these combined authorities working together on reducing health inequalities, bringing together this mutual interest. So in terms, I'm just at section 4 now of the paper, in terms of the purpose, really looking at how we can make the most of combined authorities taking systemic action in this space, and also generating specific insights on the combined authority tier of leadership and what that role is in improving health. So in terms of what the programme is specifically aiming to do, firstly, extending the evidence base on how combined authorities can add value in tackling health inequalities, increasing understanding within combined authorities of their levers available to them in this space, strengthening collaboration and peer learning across combined authorities, making tangible progress on activity to tackle health inequalities, and then aiming to sustain capacity within combined authorities to prioritise work on health inequalities. So delivery of the programme will be through several different components and will be overseen by Governance Board, which will be led by Mubashir as the programme SRO, supported by the other combined authorities involved, and also the Health Foundation as the funder of this piece of work. There'll be a central team of 6 staff, which will be hosted by the West Midlands Combined Authority, will sit within the Health and Communities team. So the central team will primarily be focusing their time on providing direct capacity to all the combined authorities involved, and then the other proportion of their time will be on building the evidence base and disseminating these findings across the combined authorities. This will include responsibility for monitoring and evaluation of the programme. The central team will consist of a part-time consultant in public health, 2 senior policy officers, 1 policy officer, and a part-time project manager, and will be led by the delivery manager stroke policy lead. We hope to have 2 to 5 embedded posts across other combined authorities. So Manchester and Liverpool have already signed up to receiving an embedded post, and we're hoping that this will be the same in at least 2 to 3 other combined authorities. Impact work will be delivered through the central team or embedded posts. These will be aligned to combined authorities' regional context and their needs, and will be based on the principle of value add to business as usual. And the Health Foundation will also be providing data analysis support. Learning network, which was started in the previous project, will be built upon and galvanised through an additional comms and website support. And what I find particularly exciting as well is that we will have an external learning partner supporting this programme. This will be separately commissioned through the Health Foundation, and this will be a leading thought leader within the sector, pulling in fresh insights, but also producing longer term reflections on the outputs and changes taking place as a result of the programme. In terms of the timelines, so between now and the end of June, we are in the setup phase. So this includes recruitment to the central team, some of the embedded posts, and importantly, the programme delivery plan. And once that has been drafted, we will bring that back to the board for your consideration. We will then start the 2 delivery years. So that will be July 23 to June 25. And then we will then have a final outputs wrap up stage up until October 25, where we will finalise the outputs report and also explore scope for a further 2-year extension from the Health Foundation. I'll just quickly go through our intended outcomes and impacts of this programme. So of course, delivery of specific activity within combined authorities, measured by unique metrics depending on those specific projects, contributing to join up of city region approaches to support partnerships in place, and that's been a theme throughout conversation today as well, so hoping to support that. Building and understanding the opportunities offered by combined authorities, building capability within combined authorities around thematic policy and programmes, contributing to internal buy-in within combined authorities as to their role in this space. as well as developing greater understanding of metrics of where and how regional tier working has greatest impact in this space, sustaining focus, action and understanding on health inequalities across combined authorities, structural powers internally, and influencing mayors to tackle health inequalities in their manifesto developments. So there's been some topical areas which have emerged through the co-development of the programme. This was co-developed across the combined authorities involved, then also not just within health folk. For example, within the West Mids, we involved our housing, transport, skills colleagues and are now having some conversations with our inclusive growth colleagues. So really widening the scope of who's involved. So some of the areas of focus thus far has been around systems thinking and learning, building the evidence base around what is emerging as some key gaps, i.e. preventative spend business cases, wider determinant predictive spend analysis, and looking at that art of the possible learning and action as well. So for example, looking at how we could expand successful place-based models across the different regions involved. In terms of implications for the West Midlands Combined Authority, first and foremost, it provides us with additional capacity on our work on health inequalities and also impact monitoring too. It provides us with peer support from the other combined authorities, the learning partner, collective programme advocacy to the M10 group and national government, and contributing to shaping and strengthening our devolution negotiations. And then when, of course, we're further down the line with our devolution agreement. And also, my final point, really helping us to progress our health and all policies approach. The programme is really focused on systemic action being taken by combined authorities across their levers and across the system, really enhancing their role. So really building on much of what's been discussed today. Hopefully I didn't go through that too quickly. And I'd now, I'll pass back to yourself. So.
Lovely, thank you. Mubashir, anything further to add?
Well, I mean, I think it's all there in the paper.
Yeah.
Keen to kind of discuss what this means for the CA and the regional partners and how we expand this to be really meaningful for us rather than just kind of supporting some of the newer combined authorities to get into the space. So it'd be great to hear some feedback from members.
Yeah, and very interesting to see how the programme's going to work across the combined authorities in general and the comparables, which will be of great interest. Sorry, Jasper, did you want to come in? I saw your hand pop up for a moment. There we go.
Okay.
And then Justin.
Yeah, I really welcome this funding, and this is something to be really excited about and shout about that. That this funding has come in, and yeah, it'd be quite good to have those comparisons across the different combined authorities and see how we can improve or reduce health inequalities. Really welcome this funding.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jasper. Justin.
Yeah, I suppose I'm probably slightly less positive than Councillor Jasper on this one, because actually, in essence, there's a learning network. There's policy posts, although it doesn't look like any of those are coming to the West Midlands. And then there's 300,000 funding available across the whole of the group for the whole of the project. So there's a relatively small amount of cash to bid for in terms of support. But I suppose some cash is better than no cash, which is the more cup half full on this one. I suppose questions for the team around as we go into this, how much work do we need to do before the kind of priority setting phase with the board? Second to that is kind of how does this link across with the health of the region task group that's forming some quite kind of concrete-y suggestions for action, particularly around real living wage as a kind of anchor point. And then the third is, I suppose, coming back to that point of the policy posts that are being created don't appear to be in the CA. And reading the report, it looks like that's because Manchester or Liverpool put some match money on the table for those posts. And I suppose my question is then, what's the conversation within the CA? Because the value of this is not kind of being a bystander. The value is really rolling up sleeves and getting in. And if we haven't got an anchor point locally, I'd be worried about how much value we're going to get out of it.
Yeah. Bashir.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, absolutely valid points to point out. Just to point out, I mean, we do have the central team which will be hosted here, and granted that they are going to be working across the other CAs, but the point of the central team, as was in the bid, was that they will work to the level of what each combined authority is at. So in the up and coming combined authorities, their work will be really to just explore, as they did in the previous project with us, of what levers could be used to impact on health outcomes. In other combined authorities like ours, especially because they're based here, their capacity is going to be used for policy development as they are. So while we don't have an embedded post here, that's mainly because we had an embedded post in the previous project, which we have retained as permanent, as ongoing posts. Grace is sitting there, proof of that point. And the other combined authorities saw that as a really good model, and this is why we put it into this project. And so Greater Manchester and Liverpool are the next ones who are going to test that, and hopefully we can bring other combined authorities along the same journey, so that they have then an ongoing embedded post influencing health policy within those CAs. So absolutely, we are keen to want to use this for our advantage as much as we can. And one of the key things that we're looking at is, as you mentioned, the cost of living issue. But there are other cross-cutting themes that I think were mentioned on the paper as well, that we hope to do, not just in isolation as one impacted project in one combined authority, but something that we can do across multiple CAs to combine the funds. And the whole idea is for this to aid our overall work. And so given that we don't specifically have health-related funding, we're trying to grasp them from wherever we can, in a sense. And this is one of those things where we hope that this will support some of the ongoing work that we already have, be that the living wage region or other pieces of work that look into that space. So really, really good points. But absolutely, this is something that we are considering, and we want to continue to co-develop with you. When I say you, Wellbeing Board, but also the local public health expertise, because that would be key to make sure that it is actually impactful, what we take forward.
And I think the shared learning, has got to be useful across the whole system thinking, and particularly picking up the point of working with the ICSs and how we start to hone and gel that and get some value out of it. Really, I think that would be great. So launching in June, and I gather then it's sort of 2.25 year program. Yeah. So we'll no doubt have it back and learn more about it as it progresses, and you'll update us, Grace, as it goes through.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Thank
as
you.
Bashir has touched upon, we will we will work with partners during that phase. So yeah.
Thank you. That would be very helpful, and then we can see how we're gaining. Okay. And again, the recommendations, whoopsie, are there. They're largely for noting it because it rather than actual decision making. So we've got some feedback and we note those, but we will take that forward to the next meeting of the Combined Authority for ratification as well. Okay. So that takes us then, I think, on to the final item, Mubashir, which is the high-level deliverable updates as usual.
Yes, indeed. And I will try to go through these really quickly because we've been given the time. And just to link back to the Combined Authority inequalities program from the previous paper, that will then become part of this reporting. So I'm just going to try and go through this by exception. I'm hoping that people, members have had a chance to go through the paper.
Yes.
And I will just highlight some of the key things that I think are worth noting and potentially give a little bit of time to discuss them. Just in terms of the health of the region roundtable and the core group that was mentioned by Justin earlier, we held a session in January. We discussed quite a bit around mental health commission and the disability exemplar at the roundtable. The core group has since recommended a real living wage across the region as a key priority that the Combined Authority and the Mayor could get behind. And this is something which is a joint recommendation with the Mental Health Commission as well. So this is something that we are going to now start developing and exploring, and we'll come back to the board as work progresses. Around the health medtech thing, it's key to mention the Smart City Region proposal, which we've been working with WM5G on. So both of these areas, Tayton leads for the team, and she's been coordinating on our behalf and making sure that we are linked in. So there's positive news on the Smart City Region from the devolution discussions, as I've already mentioned. We continue to deliver on our design sprints work, which was focused on health inequalities that started out last year, and we are continuing our work with partners to take that forward, both internal and external. The King's Fund workshop program, again, which was mentioned previously by Justin in terms of the disability seminar that was held earlier last week, was the last of our 4 that we wanted to do with King's Fund. And it just highlights the point in terms of what we can achieve as a regional convener in the region around issues which our partners think we could do better across the region as a group. And we hope to bring a final report on the 4 sessions that King's Fund did for us to the board at a future meeting. Again, embedding HIAP work continues. I won't go into that. I really want to progress, and we've talked about disability region as well. But I want to go a little bit into Thrive into work if I can. Thrive at Work, just to say that we were struggling with recruitment, but we have now completed that. And we're hoping that our new place-based approach is going to be a lot more fruitful and actually work a lot closer together with our local authority partners on that one. This is a theme that we want to take into Thrive into Work as well, which we had a fear of losing funding for nearer to Christmas, but there was some stellar work done by the Mayor and the ICB chief execs to try and dissuade DWP from taking away the funding for this program. So we now have confirmed extension of the program for another 2 years. And we really want to take that further in terms of how we can approach IPS in the region. Again, working really, really closely with place-based teams and co-developing local-based solutions with local authority partners, as well as the health partners, where this program is quite key. Mark Exel has been a great advocate for this, and I really just want to extend a special thanks to him for supporting and sponsoring this program for us. The only other thing that I would say is, given that we were squeezed for this program in terms of the funding being cut and then funding being improved, the mobilization period for the next phase of this is cut short. So we're really struggling to get that through really quickly. But DWP is aware, the Work and Health Unit is aware, and we're just making sure that they stay happy with us. They're happy enough that they're coming to visit us next week. So we think that's a good sign. Yes, we'll stop there and take any questions at this point.
Fantastic. Good. Well, that was a great win, I have to say, getting that money. So congratulations all involved in that, because it's a valuable program and one that we definitely want to see continued. Mark, you're needing to go to another meeting, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. Oh, hang on. I need, but yeah, slides should be part. Yeah, I'm sure we can pick up that. Okay. Does anyone want to come in on the paper? I'm just checking if we've got any. There are no hands, Bashir. I think we're happy with the work programme, and particularly would like also to just say, you know, thanks on the work around getting the money extended. So that I think that's been the particular win that I wanted to identify. So nothing more on that, I think, Mubashir. Back to you, I guess. If there's anything you wanted to highlight as we wrap that up.
No, I think appreciate the comments, and we'll continue to update and report back on the high-level deliverables.
Yeah.
We're hoping that some of these will continue into next year, but others will be brought to the next board as the high-level deliverables that we'll take forward for next year.
Okay, thank you. That just takes me, so we've yet to be confirmed the date of the next meeting. We haven't got that one confirmed yet, but I will take forward to the Combined Authority in just short of 2 weeks' time the outcomes of today's meeting, and we'll get those ratified so that it's, you know, bearing in mind that we weren't formally quorate, so that will be done. But can I thank everyone for attendance today and for their input on some really important programs that we're running, and for the work that they've done in getting us to that point. There's some exciting stuff happening here, which I look forward to hearing more about over the months ahead. So thank you all very much, and best wishes. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.